Hello, my dear friends. Very good late evening, exclusively for my music lovers and musician friends, brothers and sisters. I am now present to share regarding a brief life sketch of Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskarji, 1872 to 28th 1931. His great tenure. In the 19th century, an enveloping musical renaissance was trying to take charge in India, and Maharashtra was no exception. Sometimes the realness of the renaissance has been questioned. For example, doubts have been raised about whether reinterpretation of older texts to provide guidelines for contemporary action can be described as a true reform, as the basic strategy of preferring texts to life pattern as decision makers remained untouched. However, the work done in the field of music by Pandit V.N. Bhatkhande, Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, and Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskar has been accepted as fitting examples of Renaissance and reform related to music. If motivation, the scope of the intended and achieved work, and the intensity of efforts to accomplish the ideal set forth as life work, and all such factors are considered, it can be rightly claimed that these two Vishnus from Maharashtra were glorious reforms of Indian classical music in many respects. In this attempt, the work of Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskar is short to be evaluated. Swami Chetanji is watching. Thank you, Swami Chetanji of Uttarkashi, Himalaya. Glad to see over here. Under the Maratha rule, many small princely states were active centers of culture, and Kurundwad and Patvardhans as its ruler was one of them. Vishnu's father, Digambar Pant, was a practitioner of Naradiya Kirtan in the Brahmin state. As the kind of kirtan invariably included philosophical religious discourses permeated with music, Vishnu could be said to have enjoyed religion and music as his staple food from the childhood. Indeed, both music and religion are understood in the Indian tradition as force to bring the society together. Vishnu's vision became too weak very early, and the normal school education had to be ruled out. Perhaps this was the reason why Vishnu decided to pursue music as a career. So, after a brief stint with one Pandit Mahesh Maheshwar Bua, known as a good singer of Tappa. Vishnu received good talim from Balakrishna Bua Ichalkarji, Ichalkarjikar, who was the person responsible for firmly establishing the Gwalior Gharana of Hindustani art music in Maharashtra. About the time Vishnu also had to get married according to the conventions of the time. In 1896, at the age of 25, Vishnu had decided to move out to test professional waters as a musician and a vocalist. According to the established custom, he had to begin by performing for the wealthy feudal lords and rulers of the princely states to get patronage and recognition for launching his career. For example, in the first tour he visited Satara, Baroda, Katwar, Rajkot, Gwalior, Aligarh, Mathura, Delhi, Jalandhar, Amritsar, Lahore, Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, Udaipur, and Bombay. But it is noteworthy that in 1897 he organized a ticketed public performance of music because, as hinted earlier, he was keen on finding a new kind of patronage for music and musicians. In the same year, in a memorable revolutionary incident, a sadhu he met in Mount Garner advised him to go and explore the north and go to Punjab to attain his aims. Vishnu Digambar performed impressively in the famous Harvallav Mela in 1898, and he started receiving invitations to perform. It is obvious that while handling a busy performing schedule, he was also closely observing the social and cultural scene, analyzing the musico's social behavior and deciding on one of his more specific goals in music and related fields. He decided to work simultaneously in music performance, music education, and music propagation and made this a mission of his life. This is the background on which he opened a music teaching institution in Lahore in the year 1901. When he was about 29, in a prophetic incident in 1902, one of his admirers presented him with a copy of Tulsi Ramayana. If music shaped Vishnu's life, the Ramayana and Vishnu's devotion to Ram determined the nature and shape of Vishnu's music. Both were much more than influences. It is instructive to note some other events that took place in his life during this early period. Appreciated together, they give a better idea of the scope of his total achievement. For example, in the year 1904, he joined a procession taken out in Lahore demanding freedom from the foreign British rule. He was engaged in singing patriotic songs in the procession, and one famous song had a line criticizing the ignorance of the people. How long will you remain in ignorance, O inhabitants of my Bharat? कितने दीन ज्ञानहीन रहोगे? Much later in 1921, he acceded to Gandhiji's request and sang Ram Dhoon to quieten a restless crowd attending a meeting. As an activity linked to his multi-accepted task of music propagation. Shiv Shankar Chakravarti. Thank you very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Shiv Shankar, that you are witnessing my live telecast, a brief life sketch of Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskarji. And music education, he also founded an instrument make factory and a printing press along with the music school. Mr. Daulat Rao Sindhe was put in charge of the factory and Mr. Narayan Khandekar looked after the press. A separate A separate sections was opened in the school to look after music teachers training. In the year 1905, he launched a magazine devoted to music, appropriated and ambitiously, namely, it was Sangeet Mut Sangeet Martand during 1908 to 1913. Branches of the school were opened in Bombay, Pune, Nagpur, and in the year 1915, the music classes run in Bombay were relocated and turned into an impressive looking music institution. A notable coincidence was that Lokmanya Tilak's that Geet, the Geet Rahasya was published in the same year. Now next, one of my friend S.K. Singh is watching. Thank you, Mr. S.K. Singh. The regularity of the occasions bring home the success, and the venture in between Panditji was established that Ram Nam Adhar Sangeet Mandal in the year 1918. A son, Dattatreya, was born in the year 1921. He was Panditji's only son who survived and earned a name as a musician, though he too died early, leaving behind a tragic feeling of so much unrealized potential amongst those who followed his short career and Panditji's audience. It is indeed true to say that events in Panditji's life give an impression of an embattled, tragic hero in a Greek tragedy. Even after achieving so much in so many music related fields, he was forced to close his institute in Bombay and auction off all his property in the multicolored city of Bombay, in which he had created deep imprints. Was it a presentiment that prompted him to begin donning a kafani, a known traditional sign of renouncement since 1922? Attempts were reportedly made to reopen the institute in the year 1929 by securing a place in Khetwari and then in Bunham Hall Lane, but all that was in vain as far as Panditji's institutional life was concerned. He was merely 52 at that time. His historic struggle seemingly continued on a personal basis. For example, a women's music conference was organized under the leadership of Srimati Petit in Bombay, and Panditjis perhaps formulated the basic idea and also participated in her conference. The first music teachers conference organized in Nasik in the year 1928 and had his inspiration and participation. During the same year, he visited Sri Lanka and delivered lectures in English. In Pune, the issue of employing Marathi for making Hindustani art music was being hotly discussed, and Panditji was in the forefront of the discussion. In the year 1929, he was planning to visit England and also to act in a film of Sant Tulsi Das. However, while engaged in all these and varied activities, he was becoming more and more detached. He had accepted the fate of facing countless defeats and yet to continue working in music education, propagation, and institutionalization of music. He died in Miraj when he was only 59. Evaluation as a vocalist, music educationist, music propagator, and music organization. It can't be stated that Panditji's work in the field of music could be classified as that of a vocalist, music educationist, music propagator, and a music organizer. Panditji as a vocalist, unfortunately, there is no direct evidence today such a audio recording, etc., to enable us to arrive at an independent evaluation of Panditji's music performances. This is rather surprising, as even a traditional performer such as Ustad Rahimat Khan was recorded in the year 1920. Professor Deodhar has noted that Panditji was rarely heard in a mahfil because Panditji demanded rupees 500 as a honorarium at that time, and secondly because he did not accept invitations to sing at celebration of marriages, etc. As a cumulative effect, his music is not available to us. Secondary evidence of descriptions of his singing by his disciples, admirers, etc., is not of much, as such descriptions tend to be similar even when compared with writings on other musicians. As a result, Panditji's specific qualitative contribution as a performer cannot be imagined from a perusal of such sources. Panditji had also published some booklets that consisted of notation of musical elaboration of certain ragas, almost trying to produce scores of music as in Western musical tradition. However, the notation system was too skeletal for the purpose, and such publications were not numerous. So, this unique attempt is useful, not forgetting an idea of his performing prose, but his thoroughness as a music educator and propagator. Panditji as a pioneer music educator, fortunately, there is ample evidence of his achievement as a music educator. Perusal of what his disciples have written about him, books that Panditji authored, and contemporary accounts all bear testimony to his immense and multi directional work in the field of music education. It is interesting to note that even before he established his music teaching institution at Lahore in 1901, he was already thinking about evolving a mechanical aid for keeping tal. Western musicians have been using metronome as a rhythm tempo keeping mechanism from the 18th century, and Panditji must have been inspired by this vogue. He also evolved and finalized a notation system which carries a clear impress of the Western staff notation. What emerges is that he was thinking and working on evolving modern means of teaching and learning music even before he began the actual campaign. Of course, what is more fundamental than the matter of educational means is the phenomenon of shaping an appropriate musical pedagogy, and that musical pedagogy essentially what strikes in his attitude, in his conviction that music education needed to be rescued from gurus, ustads, whims, disciples, fate, destiny, and divine coincidences. Having done so, it can be transformed into a disciplined approach which is irrespective of the persons concerned. This seems to be his basic faith, and he worked accordingly. Panditji believed that the revered Guru Shishya Parampara was appropriate to music, but a change in the framework in which the Parampara functioned was needed. Hence, he tried to reorganize different aspects of music education. Thus, even though there was a Gurukul and the staying of the disciple with the Guru in his model, it was minus the usual excess of domesticity, etc., and the attempt was to enable the disciple to be near the Guru while he was engaged in his music related activities. He insisted that his music teaching institution must have a character of a platform that allowed an intense exposure of trainers to a wide ranging musical behavior accompanied by a rather impersonal process of learning and teaching. He also devoted considerable attention to the matter of what is to be taught through the institutional infrastructures which he so hopefully created. He had defined two fundamental principles in this respect. Firstly, all students of music need not be and cannot be performers. And secondly, all those who desire learning music must have an opportunity to do so. For this purpose, a certain body of music from the rich musical culture must be made accessible to them. He was aware of one of the proud features of Indian culture, that there cannot be an Indian who is entirely non musical, owing to the very richness of Indian music understood in its larger sense. Once having grasped this truth, the question what is to be taught, once having grasped this truth and question what is to be taught was solved immediately, yet another fact of Panditji's response to this question is to be noted. It is easy to conclude that all musical genres and the Carnatic system of art music are to be included in the scope of music education taken in a wider context. However, to pay attention to Western music and Western musical instruments showed a rare and a desirably modern as well as a somewhat exceptional perception. This is why in the 1921 music conference he organized in Bombay, he invited the well-known Bombay and based pianist Professor Skrinzi to present an item. Professor Skrinzi was a celebrated music teacher and he also reviewed programs of Western music for the Times of India. Further, as was natural to the musical activist in him, Pandit Vishnu Digambar gave a scholarship to one of his young disciples, B.R. Deodhar, to learn Western music from Professor Skrinzi, and with a similar scholarship sent Mr. Dhundiraj Paluskar to an Italian violinist to learn violin. Once the content of what is to be taught was decided upon, Panditji turned his attention to details such as drawing up of the required curricula, creating means and literature appropriate to the curricula, and that imparting the necessary training to selected teachers for implementing the design courses. From his campaign to propagate music on the widest possible scale, he did not exclude even the task of introducing music to amateur music lovers. His astonishingly comprehensive attitude is apparent in the fact that he clearly recognized the fact that motives of those who take to music are bound to differ and therefore courses, etc., have also to be extremely varied. Traditional or authentic khayal music, elementary as well as artistically rich bhajan compositions, music fit to accompany physical exercise, and music to divert attention of the crowd or mobs, all found a place on his musical spectrum. He was aware of the cultural fact that music which is not musically rich can, however, be socio-culturally legitimate as well as valuable. He was able to step beyond the narrow confines of personal likes and dislikes or individual capacities and capabilities, and hence he was able to think of and see beyond the immediately visible horizon. This is the reason why he can rightfully be regarded as a revolutionary, reformist, and socio-culturally relevant musician of a whole nation. Thank you. Other friends are also witnessing. So thanks to my friends and music lovers uh, for kind. If you are kindly listening, kindly write your exclusive comments. If you like, please comments publications. Then I would be energized to more. I have the music and subjects related to spiritual. Perhaps the publications it is helpful to consider in some detail the musical literature he created in this context. It must be noted that the immense fundamental and grammatically oriented literature authored so heavily by Pandit Bhatkhande has been rather incorrectly considered as the only relevant music related literature. This has been the view because out of ignorance, generation of means of music education and a production of literature is not considered scientific. A reference to Mr. Govind Rao Paluskar's article in the Sangeet Kala Bihar, May June 2001 provides valuable information in this context. Panditji's 60 publications can be broadly classified under 9 headings. Number 1, on culturing voice and undertaking melodic elaboration with the help of embellishments. Number 2, introductory study of music. Number 3, on Gaiki Ang. Number 4, on Hori and such other musical genre. Number 5, Khayal presentation and elaboration according to the Gwalior Gharana. Number 6, patriotic songs. Number 7, Bengali and Carnatic music. Number 8, music to accompany physical exercise. And number 9, singing of Tulsi Das's Doha and Chaupai. 4 books deal with selected musical establishments and embellishments, their use and role in celebrating musical ideas. And his suggestion is to study embellishments along with linguistic vowels a, u, and e, and further to use them in connection with different ragas as also to the accompaniment of rhythmic patterns. Panditji also referred to the permutation combination of 7 notes wielding 50-40 elaborations as noted in the Ratnakar. All these were published around 1900, and this certainly proves him to be a discerning pioneer. That Balode Sangeet 3 parts, Sangeet Bal Prakash 3 parts, and that Salpagyan are introductory volumes to music making, that the target audience is clearly mentioned as the children below 10. Interesting features of the Balode are songs composed with a sequential inclusion of 5, 6, and 7 notes and information imparted through a question-answer method. Sangeet Bal Prakash consists of 44 bhajan compositions of 11 saint poets, 3 sargamit, and 8 talas, and 28 ragas that are more commonly used. The publications Swalpalap consists of alap tans of compositions included in Sangeet Bal Prakash. It is obvious that the books are useful even to those whose mental age in music matches the group described as below 10. The methodical approach to music making and opening of the concerned students' vision is obvious. Similar compositions by saint poets are also included in publications on music for women. Rag Pravesh Malika 19 parts and Sangeet 5 parts provide basic compositional that material to more advanced practitioners of music in the Rag Pravesh. Each part deals with one raga and one bandis. Bada and Chota Khayal, Thumri, and Bhajan are the genres included. The compositions explored in all 7 talas and notation of the bandish is given. Phases of elaboration identified as alap, bol, tan, and Tan and Sargam are included. The assumed performance is structured as a more or less sequential rendering of ascending descending patterns is Nom Tom. Then Sthai. Number 3, Antara, and 4, vibrations of Mukhra. Number 5, short and longer Alap. Number 6, Boltan of the Sthai. Number 7, ascending and descending Tans. Number 8, Mukhra variation of Antara. Number 9, Boltan inclusive of employment of A and E vowels. Number 10, Tan in double, treble, tempo, etc. Number 11, Boltan on selected syllables or words with emphasis on vowels. Number 12, Virtuoso Tan, that is ranging over multiple octaves. Number 13, Tan in increased tempi and conclusion. It is obvious that changes could be and would be made according to the composition raga in question. These manuals consist of notations of music actually performed for the purpose because performing competence in the aim. The noted performances are on average of duration of 15 minutes each. It is to be mentioned that many of the compositions explode in this effort and traditional for the second series entitled Sangeet with one raga each for the 5-part series. It has been specially mentioned that singing of Khayal is kept in mind. Each item consists of a slok of that ragadhya, a bada khayal, a number of chota khayals, tarana, dhrupads, and dhamar. Compositions in medium tempo, alap, bol, tan, and tan appropriate to them are noted. It is stated that the material provided would be of the duration of about 30 minutes. In the volume respectively entitled Hori 1923 and Tappa 1927, information of the genres and notation of 22 and 23 compositions is given. The former includes 2 compositions by the Panditji and the genre specific Tal Dipchandi is introduced. The second, reflecting the compiler's honesty, notes that the Antara of one traditional composition is not given as Panditji himself did not know it. That Sangeet Bal Bodh consists of Jor Raga, introduces Tal Rupak compositions employing Tal such as Savari rare from such a Ashtapadi in addition to Khayal, Tarana, Sargam and other genres in circulation. Volumes on Carnataki and Bengali music brought out in 1923 included 7 and 15 compositions respectively. Books titled Rashtriya Sangeet and Vyam Ke Saath Sangeet. Vyam Ke Saath Sangeet include 4 compositions and marching music respectively. One of his disciples, Mr. Dhundiraj Paluskar, had compiled an anthology of Doha and Chaupai compositions that Panditji used to render some generalizations about the publications seem necessary. These are designed to provide detailed performing maps to music makers of all sorts. They can loosely be described as music scores. Sangeet music is nearly equated with singing. However, music is not equated with or confined to classical or art music. This is a revolutionary step in the Indian context and needs to be acknowledged as that. Writing on music in India due to over emphasizing the grammatical aspect of music overlooked that theoretical writing can be much more wide ranging. It is also not recognized that music can also be applied, that writings on these aspects is also important, and authors of this kind of literature are not given their due recognition. Not only that, Panditji produced written material that was performance centered, but he also put forward a very wide spectrum of music as an expression. So, dear friends, music lovers, and musicians too, this was the brief life sketch about Pandit Vishnu Digambar Palushkar ji, his famous bhajan Thumaka Chalata Ramachandra. So, dear friends, music lovers, here it was a small brief sketch. Time to time, I always love to share brief life sketches of Indian classical musicians. So be happy. Where I always say I would like to quote this these exclusive quotes, where words fill music with the perfect notation, either melodious voice of singing or playing any instrument, it speaks spiritually. So be happy, be connected with Gautam Kumal Gandhar alias Gautam Bandyopadhyay. Thank you so much and be musically tuned and spiritually blessed. Very good night, dear friends.